Well, you can watch Miller and Moulton on the Miller and Moulton Twitch and YouTube channels. Seth Everett to join us coming up in roughly 25 minutes. It's a pleasure to welcome back he of the sporting news, Bill Bender. You can follow Bill on Twitter at BillBender92. Bill, how are you and the family doing these days?
Oh, we're hanging in there like everybody else, just kind of getting through this thing one day at a time. And, you know, they're starting to slowly reopen some things in Ohio, but still in the quarantine life.
Well, that is where we are as well. Not as quarantined in Florida as you are in Ohio, but it's not that far off. We looked at yesterday, Bill, as a pretty significant day in terms of sports and the coronavirus. It looked yesterday for the first time that sports collectively really took a step forward. NASCAR announced they're having races. You know, we've got kids that are going to be on campus, it looks like, at places like Purdue and Oregon. And Brett McMurphy did that poll with the ADs. They say they're going to play. Do you now have a better feeling of college football being played than you did a week ago?
Yeah, I do, but I still think it might be, pushed back a little bit. I'm hoping against hope that's not the case. But, it's just about getting kids on campus safely. It's about getting, the testing done and making sure that there's not a lot of risk. And I still think you have to have fans in the stands, or I'm hoping that we can have fans in the stands, and that would make it that much better. But, I would be surprised if the season's delayed a little bit, but we still have football. They're going to do everything they can to make sure we have football because of the money that's involved.
Well, and Bill, we've been discussing, can you do fans in the stands but only do it halfway, if you know what I mean? Because social distancing, even at just 6 feet. So does that mean if four of us come to the game, we sit in seats 1, 4, 7, and 10? Can you sit people behind us and between us? I mean, we're kind of wondering that if we're going to put people in the stands, do we let them congregate amongst each other the way we're going to let people on campus congregate amongst one another? It's kind of like, hey, the risk is on you. You don't have to buy a ticket, but if we're open for business, we're open for business.
I mean, that's kind of the thinking, and then you get into that, and then I was telling people, football, the game itself, I mean, hygienically speaking, there's so much sweat and blood and spit on the field that it's not the cleanest game in the world. It's one of the dirtier games in the world, and it has to be safe for the student athletes, because the one thing you want to avoid is that Rudy Gobert moment where everything would be reset down, and I think that's almost the worst thing you can do is open everything up, and then 2 weeks later, we got to shut it down again, and you don't want that to happen.
And that's, to me, the greater question becomes on campus. If a kid in a dorm gets it, what are they going to do then? Because we all are in agreement that there's no college football without kids back on campus. But certainly when you see Brown, Purdue, and Oregon all say they're going to have kids on campus, East Coast, Midwest, left coast. I mean, we can't have geographically 3 more different places, and probably from a thought process 3 more different places. And I think we'll see more colleges announce that in the coming weeks, that they're going to be bringing kids on campus. The question then becomes, to me, Bill, what happens if Rutgers says we can't? And they're to me, the easiest example to point to. They're a member of a Power 5 conference. They are right in the heart of where the coronavirus is hit hardest in this country. And they're the ones that are going to probably have to be the most cautious of any school that plays big-time Division I athletics not in California. What happens if the Big Ten says we're ready to play and Rutgers says, I don't know what to tell you, we're not?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's another possible thing. Some schools may not be able to open, and if for the people that track that thing, you're absolutely right. That's one of the areas of the country that's been just ravaged by the coronavirus. I mean, you're talking about over 100,000 cases and multiple deaths and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, that's something to consider. I still think as far as the schools go, it's all or nothing. Like, I don't know that they're going to exclude certain schools. I don't know if they can. I don't know what the legal implications of that are for TV revenue and all those kind of things.
He's Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Follow him on Twitter at BillBender92. Today, seen as a big day in the history of the NCAA. Shortly, they're going to begin, or at least we believe they're going to take the first steps towards letting student athletes profit off of their name, image, and likeness. Bill, is this the end of the NCAA as we know it? Is this the only thing they could do to keep themselves in business? There are many in AD that feels that the NCAA is heading to ruin this way, that they would have been better off fighting, the old Charlton Heston, you'll rip this out of my cold, dead hands to their death, as opposed to trying to figure out a way to be all things to all people.
I mean, I think they can still enforce rules. But I just think this is another way to make the game more student-athlete friendly. And most people don't have a problem with it, and I think it will actually help the game more than it hurts. Just because it might get rid of some of the things that led to the federal trials in basketball and those kind of things too. But I do think the NCAA as an organization, it's still going to be around. Remember, these guys are hired by school presidents, so it's not for as many hits as they take. They're merely an enforcement agency, and I think they'll continue to be that as we move forward.
Do you anticipate with the payment? Do you think they're going to be able to pull this off? What's the biggest hitch in the giddy up, if you know what I mean? Where do you see, we've all figured out that this is going, but where are the problems that you see ahead? The biggest problems?
I mean, boosters that find ways to work around and give athletes, do you put a cap on how much an athlete should be able to make in a year? Those kind of things. I mean, certain athletes are much bigger to the college game than others. I mean, like Trevor Lawrence, for example. I mean, does that mean he can do a Pert Plus commercial and make X amount of money off of it before he even gets to the NFL? Again, I don't care if he does. I mean, some of those athletes deserve that. I think this is I always tell people these type of rules are not geared toward Trevor Lawrence and, Joe Burrow and those guys. They're geared toward, the guys that were like Tommy Frazier and the college football legends that maybe not necessarily – Tim Tebow could have made a ton of money in college that he didn't make in the NFL, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does, even though he was a first-round pick, but he had a very short career, and we were kind of viewing him when he was in college as someone who might be a big hit-or-miss prospect.
Maybe he's the worst. You know what I'm getting at.
Yeah,
maybe
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, Trace McSorley of Penn State, a terrific college career. He's trying to latch on. I think he's on the Ravens practice squad. But though, you can have the terrific college athlete. And they actually think it could help some of the Olympic sport athletes also. That not just the big football and basketball athletes. You were on the Feinbaum show yesterday, and you said that you really believe there's only 5 teams this coming season who can win the national title. Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, and LSU. Let's just assume you're correct. Doesn't that fly in the face then of why we should open up the playoff? I mean, if we have a clear distinction, then why do we need to throw more teams in the playoff? Shouldn't we just let those 5 whittle down to 4 and battle it out? Yeah,
and I'm getting a lot of hate on Twitter saying LSU, and LSU lost a lot, so maybe if you want to cross them off the list, fine, then it's 4. And that's why I think the 4-team playoffs are right. I don't know if you need that extra game, right? I mean, I'm not against an 8-team playoff because I think we're eventually going to get there. But in the current environment, there's only a handful of teams that can win this thing, and a handful of teams behind them that can really get to the playoffs. So, we're in a state of college football where the SEC and the Pac-12 are the only 2 conferences that you don't lightly pencil in the champion. I mean, are you guys picking anybody but Clemson in the ACC or Ohio State in the Big Ten or Oklahoma in the Big 12?
Nope.
I don't think too many people will be.
You can't. How can you? You're safe every year picking those 3.
Yeah, and the gap between those 3 and the rest of the league, with the exception of maybe Oklahoma and I hate to say it, if Texas ever gets their act together, that could be a game. But, I mean, Ohio State and Clemson are just clearly better than everybody else in their conference. And I think that's going to continue over the next 3 to 5 years if you look at the way those two schools are recruiting.
By the way, who is number 2 in the Big Ten? You know, Michigan likes to think they are, and they have an over-under of, 9 or 9.5, but they lost a decent amount of players. Is Penn State ahead of where Michigan is from a recruiting standpoint?
I think they're even. And I say that in that, the last 4 years, they basically traded wins at each other's house, and they've taken turns being the biggest competition for Ohio State. Now, if we're talking about just playing Ohio State, the last 3 years, yeah, Penn State's given Ohio State better games than Michigan, but Michigan's also beat Penn State handily. Michigan just sent 10 guys to the NFL, but that's kind of the difference between them and Ohio State is 8 of Michigan's guys were day 3 guys. So I think for Harbaugh, it's 2 things. It's about reeling in more of that 5-star blue-chip talent, and 2, developing a game-changing quarterback that can tilt the field like Justin Fields does, like Trace McSorley did. Shea Patterson went undrafted. That was one of the – and he hasn't signed. That's one of those surprises considering he was a 5-star quarterback.
Bill, what are you hearing about non-conference games? Do the ADs and coaches think that they're going to remain on the schedule, or that this college football season could just be conference games? Because I will say, and granted, all conferences are not the same size, but I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world if every Big Ten team and every SEC team played one another. Same with the ACC. I really don't. For 1 year, our coronavirus year, I don't think it'd be the worst thing in the world. I mean, yeah, it's 13 conference games, and, I don't know. Of course, they're not going to eliminate the conference championship game. It's too big of a cash grab. But you know what I'm getting at, Bill. If we didn't have non-conference games this year and the conferences really open things up, I mean, some of these schools go 5-7 years without even playing one another. They go 10, 12 plus years without playing on the road. Yeah,
I think this will be a year in sports where we just throw a lot of asterisks on how it's done. You're seeing MLB toy with their format. There might not be an NHL or NBA playoffs. It's going to be one of those years that we all look back on 20 years from now like, yeah, man, that was horrible. So hopefully, if they have to ditch the non-conference games, that's fine, just for travel concerns and those kind of things. And, I'm just hoping that we have some sort of football in the fall, because I need something to write about other than the last games.
Listen, I think there are a lot of people appreciative in Michigan of you, sticking up for the bad boys.
Oh, my friends were killing me that day. That's a long-running joke with my best friends and I. I've always been a staunch defender of the Pistons, and they think I'm trolling. And then we got in a big argument over text on Monday, and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to do the next best thing. I'm going to write a column about it, and I sent it to all of them, and then we argued some more. My buddies really hate the Pistons, but remember where I live. I live in Ohio.
And Bill, I always liked you. I liked you more now as a Michigan native and someone who loved those Piston teams. Now I'm even happier the next time we bring you back. And put a genuine smile on my face.
Yeah, just tell them. I mean, if you don't, people act like all they did was elbow people, and one of their championship teams had 5 guys that averaged 13 or more, including 2 of the best guard. The best guard play they had Dumars and Isaiah, so they were going to be in every game.
Bill Bender of the Sporting News. Follow him on Twitter at BillBender92. Bill, stay safe. All the best.
Yeah, I will. Thanks so much, guys. Take care.
Bill Bender, kind enough to join us here on Miller and Moulton.